attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody, and welcome to IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA's webinar, Core Value Awards Part 1. On behalf of both the IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA, I would like to sincerely welcome you to today's webinar. Just to let everybody know, this will be taped. So this will also be available after today's presentation as well. We're just going to hang in for a few more minutes because we've heard that some people are trying to join us. So we will get going in about 2 minutes. So please hang tight and we'll get going in about 2 minutes. Thank you. So thank you very much for your patience, everyone, and as I said, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Amelia Shaw, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. Before we get going, I'm going to hand it over to Drew, and Drew is going to run through the housekeeping items on how you can be heard, how you should be sending questions, all of those types of good things. So hang tight.
All right. Thanks, Amelia. So what we've got right now is our setup where you can take part. This is very interactive, what's going on right now. So we'll have the presentations from each of our presenters, but also some time for question and answers. And there's a number of ways you can do that. We have the question box, which you should see there, and you can just type in your question, and either Amelia will break into the presentation or wait until the presentation is over and ask the question for you, or she could answer the question for you right away, depending on the question. We also have an ability for you to speak to our presenters. There is a little hand icon that you see on the control panel there. Just click there, and that indicates you're putting up your hand and you want to say something. And then Amelia will spot that hand up there and call for you to ask your question, make your comment, whatever. As I say, it's very interactive, so feel free to put your hand up, and when Amelia calls for you, step in. We'll control your microphones. So we've got you all muted right now. What we found is if anybody has their mic unmuted, we get feedback, and that is heard all over the place. So we'll control your microphones here. If you've got them self-muted, please take them off mute and let us control them, either muting them or then unmuting them when we come to you for your question. As Amelia says, we're recording this, so we will have this ready and available to you for your professional development purposes. We'll send you the link to it, and it'll be a link exclusive to IAP2 members and also those who have paid to take part in this webinar. So we appreciate your respecting the fact that these people have worked on this specifically for this webinar here. And we should also be able to provide the PowerPoint decks that are being used as well if you need them too. That's all going to be on there within 24 to 48 hours of this webinar. So that's basically it. I'm going to hand it back over to Amelia to get this party started.
Thanks very much, Drew. So what I wanted to do was just basically start with an introduction to the core values. These core values were developed 20 years ago over a 20-year period with broad international input to identify those aspects of public participation that cross natural, cultural, and religious boundaries and that set the standard for meaningful public engagement. They have been reviewed twice since then to ensure that they are relevant in different contexts, with the last review taking place in 2005-2006. Building on the core values, IAP2 established the International Core Value Awards Program, great engagement work, which demonstrates the use of the IAP2 core values. At present, there are 3 categories: the Project of the Year, the Organization of the Year, and the Research of the Year. This is both an international award, and now it's become also an affiliate award. Affiliates had the opportunity last year to undertake their own core value award process, and this was done in South Africa, Australasia, and the United States. Those individuals then subsequently ramped up into the broader international core value awards process, and that was why you would have affiliate winners and you would also have the international winners. What we're really pleased and proud to say, because some of you are members of both IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA, is that we will be launching the affiliate award process in April or early May of this year. So we will ask you to stay tuned as we start to roll out the application process both on the IAP2 Canada and the IAP2 USA website in April or May of this year. So it's coming soon. What you're seeing in front of you right now, of course, are the core values for the practice of public participation, something that's very near and dear to our heart. So that was sort of a brief introduction as to the core values and also the core value awards process. And now it's my great opportunity to start to introduce one of our speakers who is an award winner herself. Tracy McCabe is an engagement consultant and project manager with the City of Calgary. She has over 10 years of experience in public projects and has been a member of IAP2 for over 7 years. She's developed and implemented engagement processes for a variety of projects, including projects about cycling, ethical procurement, transit, low-impact development, policy development, and flood recovery. She's an advocate for plain language and provides plain language support and training to city staff. When she's not working, she enjoys reading, comparing weather notes with her daughter in Australia, and walking her yellow lab, Lucy. So it's with great pleasure that we now introduce Tracy McCabe. So Tracy, we're going to be sending you the opportunity to put your PowerPoint up and to start this process. So Tracy, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Amelia.
Excellent. So it's all yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity. Thank you for everyone who's here on the webinar. Thank you to Amelia and Drew for getting us ready. I was very fortunate to be involved in a project called Route Ahead, which was Calgary Transit's 30-year strategic plan. And our task was given to us by City Council to develop the 30-year plan, and perhaps surprisingly, Calgary Transit had never had a long-term plan before. They'd always sort of gone from 3-year cycle to 3-year cycle. Some interesting things happened that allowed us to do the kind of engagement that we were able to. One of the critical pieces that happened is that in 2010, Mayor Naheed Nenshi was elected in Calgary. And he's a lifelong transit user, an advocate for public transportation. He's a big champion of public participation. One of his favorite words of all time is engagement. And he's being named by a national news magazine as the second most powerful person in Canada, only second to the Prime Minister. So he's a heavy hitter. We have him as our mayor. One of the things that Mayor Nenshi initiated is something called Transforming Government. And it has some core principles. And the core principles are accountability, citizen-focused, civic engagement, innovation, sustainability, and transparency. And you may be having an aha moment and saying to yourself, wow, those are completely aligned with IAP2 core values, and they're also aligned with the work of the City of Calgary's Engagement Resource Unit. So what happened is Mayor Nenshi came into power, and then the Nenshi effect was soon felt by Calgary Transit. Now in this picture you see Mayor Nenshi and the former Director of Calgary Transit, Fred Wong. And what happened is between Fred and the Mayor, they decided to take Calgary Transit service to the next level and to be a more transparent and customer-focused organization. So they are building on a great legacy and also improving it. Fred had been close to retirement for quite a while, and about 8 months into Mayor Nenshi's first term in office, Doug Morgan and Chris Jordan came on board at Transit. Doug Morgan is the new Director of Transit, and Chris Jordan was the manager of the project Route Ahead. Now they're both engineers. You'll find that at Transit there's a lot of engineers. There's Jen Malzer, who's also a professional engineer working as a senior transit planner, and John Lee, who actually is a former bus driver with Calgary Transit, now a senior transit planner. And although he's not an engineer, he is a close personal friend of many engineers. So Jen and John were thinking about, along with Doug and Chris, gosh, how are we going to do this Route Ahead project? How are we going to talk to the very, very many people that we need to talk to about transit? Now, this beautiful illustration was done by a local artist, Sam Hester, and she was working with the Calgary Transit Customer Advisory Group to come up with an illustration of archetypes of customers at Calgary Transit. And this really clearly demonstrates the vast array of people that we needed to talk to about the future of transit. We needed to talk with seniors, we needed to talk with people who use mobility devices, with young people and other people who travel with their bicycles, students, tourists, families, people with disabilities. So we had to do a really robust stakeholder identification. And we also had to figure out how we were going to get to all the people that we needed to get to. By the conclusion of the project, we'd met face-to-face with over 4,000 people, and we'd received input online from 1,000 more. One of the things that Jen and John and I came up with was this idea of what Jen liked to call a party bus. But because we're a government organization, we kept asking Jen, please don't say party bus. We were very concerned about that term getting out. But she did have an idea about a vehicle that would be fun and tricked out, and in and of itself would be an engagement experience and something that would attract people. She thought this would be a good way to reach many of Transit's customers and other people. So the creative services team at the City of Calgary came up with this idea of crowdsourcing input from people of all ages. And they said, we're going to give you a vehicle that's fun, exciting, welcoming, compelling, and crowdsourced. What if we gave people some polka dots to write their input on? And then what if we let them cover the entire bus in polka dots? And I can tell you this was a cultural shift moment for Calgary Transit, the idea that they would let people come onto buses with magic markers and stickers. A few people, I think, from the management team almost fell off their chairs, but ultimately they embraced the idea and they loved it. So the Route Ahead engagement bus was born, and here it is on launch day with Chris Jordan, Mayor Naheed Nenshi, and Doug Morgan of Calgary Transit. The bus was so popular, and it was really interesting because we wanted to seek out and involve those who would be most affected. So we knew a bus would work because it would reach existing transit customers. It went en route to existing bus lines. The transit staff and people from the project team rode on the bus and administered surveys and just had conversations with stakeholders. Also, aldermen came on board and participated in that. The bus went into communities, it traveled across the city, and it also went to a lot of local events, community events, the Mayor's Environment Expo, the Calgary International Children's Festival, Sled Island, which is an independent music festival in Calgary, and the bus was hugely popular. One of the things we did to make sure that the information given to the stakeholders allowed them to participate and understand their participation and fully experience this engagement opportunity was that we created material and opportunities that worked for them. So whether they were a visual, auditory, or tactile learner, we supported their participation. We talked with people. We provided handouts. We developed online content. We launched an online budget tool. We sent information out by email. We created videos. We did face-to-face stakeholder meetings. And of course, we created this incredible bus that went out into the community, into the Children's Festival, which was a huge hit. In fact, it was such a huge hit that we very quickly ran out of the polka dots, and we had to resort to using colored Post-it notes. And whether a person was 80 or 8, they came on board and they could write their input or they could draw a picture. It was hugely popular, and it was also amazing because it sparked a lot of intergenerational conversations. So we saw kids talking with their parents and caregivers and teachers about public transit. We heard them talking about the environmental aspect of using transit. We heard young people talk about the kind of transit service they wanted as they got older, not just very young kids, but also teenagers and young adults. It was hugely popular, and it was so great to see people talking across age groups, abilities, experiences. We had people who'd been riding transit their whole life, and we had other people who'd never even been on a transit vehicle before, finding out about what transit was all about, what it could do for them, and how it could improve the community and what they thought the future of transit should be. One of the things we were very mindful of course, was, was that we wanted to make sure that we linked the input from riders to the information that was being shared. We wanted not only to demonstrate to City Council and to corporate administration and the public, we wanted to demonstrate to the very people who participated how their input had been used. We did this in a lot of ways, but one of the key ways we did, there was a written report that went to Council that was very exhaustive and detailed. There was also a shorter citizen-friendly report that went out. But you can see here in the picture, we actually linked one of the input discs right to a decision. So the input talks about more cross-town service and not just a focus on being downtown. And that was one of the decisions that came out of the route ahead process. So in the actual report, that drew a link between the recommendation to Council and input that was received from citizens. The other thing is we made it a very simple reporting back process by talking about process, people, and product. The process was the engagement process. The people were all the people we had talked to, whether those were transit customers, future customers, members of council, surrounding communities, sports leagues, festivals, workers, people with disabilities. And then the other thing was the product, was the report, was the final strategic plan, and people could view that in a number of ways. They could look at a spreadsheet, they could look at infographics, they could watch a video. However people wanted to find out about the project, they could. We took input that came in on the discs and we blew it up and we did it as a bus wrap, so that when the bus traveled, people could read some of the input that was coming in right on the side of the bus. We got lots of funny input at the Children's Festival. No girls. The young man was sad to hear that I couldn't institute the no girls rule for him. And lots of interesting ideas having to do with a disco room, hockey arena. But we also got a lot of really solid input. So not only did we build relationships with future and current transit travelers, we got really great input from all ages. People talked a lot about wanting the right information. A lot of people brought their sense of humor to the whole experience, which was awesome. We got to see some real creativity with solid input. And we got a lot of kudos from people. So at the end of the day, what we did was we had created all these opportunities for input in person, online, face-to-face, in the community by linking with major events. We asked people to connect the dots, literally and figuratively, about transit experience in the future. Certainly, I had to, as an engagement practitioner, I had to honor the past of what the work that Calgary had done, Calgary Transit had done differently and in the past. But I did ask them to look to the future. I asked Transit to engage in big thinking and to create some big stories. And they did an amazing job, and a lot of the input is still up online on the Route Ahead site. And it was a wonderful experience. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I thank you so much for listening. This is my wonderful dog, Lucy. And I'd also like to thank IAP2 for the opportunity and for the experience at the Salt Lake Conference.
Tracy, thanks so very much. Now, we have a couple of polls that you sent us. Would you like do some of those polls now?
Absolutely.
Okay, and while we're getting those polls ready, don't forget that those of you that are out there, the participants, have the ability to raise your hand to ask Tracy any questions, or you can also send me questions through your question box. So I know that I'd love to hear from you, so raise your hand or send in a question, and after we've answered some of the polls, we'll come back to those. So your poll is up right now. And so hopefully people have the opportunity to answer that question, and we'll pull it down in 5 seconds so that we can see the answer. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there you go, Tracy. I don't know if you can see it, but 30% have used a bus or another vehicle for conducting public engagement, and 70% have never used it. So I guess for a lot of people this was a new experience. Now, I believe there is another poll question. So we'll take this back out to our participants and give them an opportunity to think about this question or whether or not and how they would like to respond. So we're going to pull this down in 5 seconds. 5, 4. All right, Drew. And so, Tracy, the answer to your question, have you ever piggybacked on large music festivals or other events to go to where the people are? 67% of the group said yes, and 33% of the group said no. Just thinking about your experience with that, maybe you'd like to do a pitch for why this was a good idea.
Well, I think for Calgary Transit that although a lot of the riders are young adults and teenagers, getting them interested in coming out and participating can be a challenge. So for us, it was a really good idea to piggyback onto Sled Island, which is an independent music festival, because it's an all-ages event for most of their venues. They have multiple venues. So we were able to go downtown to Olympic Plaza, which is a public park, and although it's cordoned off for ticket holders for Sled Island, we were able to park the bus adjacent to the concert site. So we got all kinds of people who streamed past the bus on their way into the concert site. And I believe, having done a lot of engagement in Calgary, we got a great number of young people on board the bus who we otherwise probably wouldn't have if we hadn't been at Sled Island.
Thanks, Tracy. Now you've got a question from Carolyn, and Carolyn's question is, what did you do as the next step with all the polka dot data and input? Did just your team make sense of the data, or did the community and stakeholders contribute to themes and insights?
The team sorted all the input into different theme areas. And then there was a check between the theme areas that came in and what Transit already knew about what their customers thought of transit service based on several years of research that had been done. They then put it up on their website with a video that people could comment on, so there was an online commenting tool, and they shared the input with council and in public meetings such as at standing policy committees. So people had a number of ways to review what was done and also to continue to comment on it, including a Twitter town hall that took place.
Thanks, Tracy. Now, another quick question. You had said that this was really a complete shift for the City of Calgary Transit, that you were sort of taking people out of their comfort zone with the new approach. How did people receive this new approach internally? And how do you think you'll do things? Will it be the same next time or different as a result of this experience?
Well, I have to say Transit was a dream client. They knew that they needed to step up their culture to be more in line with the dominant corporate culture that Mayor Nenshi was building through transforming culture. So they were very willing to step up their game. Previously, they had heavily relied on peer research and not so much going out to people. Or when they went out to people, they often were telling them about decisions they'd already made. So they were a dream team under the guidance of Chris Jordan and Doug Morgan. It was amazing how much they were willing to learn and do and try. And then would I do the same thing again? Well, for Calgary Transit, I don't know if it would be exactly the same thing again, but I can tell you that the engagement bus that we did for Route Ahead was so popular that that bus is now being used for current really widespread engagement around city budgeting, and also that we have created a city events vehicle that's a smaller van that's equipped with a laptop and an awning that goes out to community events. So it really has changed some of our approach for doing engagement.
Thanks so much, Tracy. We're not seeing any other questions at this point in time. Oh, yes, we are. So, from Stephen, would you have been able to do this without or before Mayor Nenshie's endorsement? Great question, Stephen. Thank you for that.
It's hard to say. Like, I think that I think we still would have done something extraordinary, but I think the fact that Mayor Nenshie is such a champion of change and of public participation really helped to add credence to the message of engagement, which is it's not enough to go out with an easel and a pad of paper. You really have to do something remarkable because you're actually competing for people's time and attention with so many other things. So I think that we would have done something remarkable, but it probably, in all honesty, would not have been as remarkable if it wasn't for the guidance of Mayor Nenshie and the entire steering committee, who did say go out and do something that's compelling, interesting, riveting, and changes the game.
Thanks, Tracy. Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. So
okay,
one more question from Bonnie. There is one more question. So Bonnie asks, were people encouraged to visit the webpage to follow the progress? How did you continue the connections made to close the loop with participants? So sort of a two-parter. Were they encouraged to get to the website, and how did you close that loop with participants?
People were encouraged to go to the website. They were encouraged verbally and through written material. There was also, Route Ahead had its own Twitter feed, and Calgary Transit has a much larger Twitter feed. So people were directed there from the Calgary Transit Twitter feed. And then the other piece was that follow-up that was done with all the stakeholder groups directed them to the website and to where to find the report, or just to watch the video about what was going on. So we did take a multi-layered approach for ensuring that people could continue to follow the story.
Terrific. And we always, I mean, this is an ongoing concern for all of us in P2, is the collecting of the participant names. So did you collect those participant names? Because you obviously had a lot of people streaming on and off those buses. And then were you able to provide them with direct follow-up?
We have participant names from what were stakeholder face-to-face meetings, for instance, when Transit met with post-secondary schools, school boards, and sports organizations. We also had citizen names because we held a citizen-to-citizen conference in support of Route Ahead, which was co-hosted by the Calgary Transit Customer Advisory Group. For all the people who came on and off the bus, we did not ask for their names. We did a privacy impact assessment, which led us to determine that asking for names and doing direct follow-up was not actually feasible or wise.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Tracy. I really appreciated that presentation. We'll have time after Corey's presented to come back to both Corey and Tracy. So if you continue to have questions, please don't hesitate to send them my way. But this is my opportunity to move on to Corey. So I am going to now mute you, Tracy, and I'm going to unmute Corey, and then I'm going to introduce Corey. So thank you, Tracy, and now we're going to Corey in just a minute. Corey Plank is a social services program administrator with the City of West Hollywood and was a lead staffer on the West Hollywood Community Study, IAP2's 2013 of the year. She previously served the city as deputy to Mayorland. Plank has an extensive background in communications and public policy and advocacy, primarily in the public service and nonprofit realms. So Corey, we now get to turn it over to you. How you doing?
Hi, good morning. Well, thank you so much for inviting us to participate. We're thrilled to be part of this session, and very happy to talk to you about the West Hollywood 2013 Community Study, which we were very honored to receive the IAP2 Core Values Award. This was an exceptionally ambitious project for us, not just in its scope, but in its commitment to unprecedented community engagement, and then also certainly in its timeline. We began our community engagement process in January of last year and concluded that in March with a summary report issued in April and a full report issued in August. It was a very fast and furious process, but certainly a very intensive and we think inclusive one. But our ambition was also scaled, with a very strategic and thoughtful plan to go beyond the usual suspects. And as you heard Tracy mention, a lot of these things that we were looking at are in line with the IAP2 core values, and we wanted to move beyond the people who typically come to a community meeting, and that's a considerable challenge for us. We have a very engaged citizenry who do turn out for commission meetings and council meetings, and so we wanted to reach those people who maybe aren't typically there. And one of the most inspiring parts of the project was, as we were out, was how happy our community members were to be engaged in this fashion. They had a lot to say, and they really appreciated the opportunity to give feedback on something as important to them as social services, and that was the focus of our outreach. They were proud that their city would conduct this type of outreach and engagement, and that we provide such a diversity of social services. So that was really one of the primary purposes, was to update our demographics, which would also then inform the development of recommendations for $4.2 million of general fund dollars that would be allocated for social service contracts. West Hollywood is a contract city, and so we partner with local agencies to provide a range of social services for our community members. So in order to do that, we had several components of our project, and we engaged a set of consultant teams. So we had teams that helped us with the community engagement. We had teams that did some of the analysis of our census and public health data. We also did a statistically valid, randomly mailed community survey, and we had consultants who assisted in that process. But with, West Hollywood is 1.9 square miles. We have about 35,000 residents. And we really have a great mix of cultures and social groups in West Hollywood, and we have about 47% of our residents identify as LGBT, 15% seniors, 11% immigrants from the countries of the former Soviet Union, about 5% or more living with disabilities, and each of those groups has played a significant role in West Hollywood, and we prioritize our participation techniques to work best for each group in order to maximize participation from each group. So to do that, we really wanted to look at the people who, as in, with the IAP2 core values, people who would be potentially affected by the funding recommendations for social services, and if there were going to be any services that might not be funded or services that would need increased funding. And so we looked at a few different ways to really reach out to all of those groups. And we did the traditional, meetings, we did, stakeholder interviews, we did focus groups. But what we added this year, which I think generated the most excitement, was this pop-up workshop. And you see on the screen here, we've got a picture of one of the workshops. We engaged people. We took the public meeting to the people. And so we set up in different locations, so at our farmers markets, at our senior center, parks, libraries, at busy intersections. We looked at different times of day. We looked at evenings, weekends, in order to really maximize our opportunity to talk to people who we might not hear from otherwise. And so when we went out into the public, so you can see there's a picture there in the back, we had opportunities for people to engage with us. It looked very colorful, it was very welcoming, it looked like something fun was happening there, so people didn't just kind of look and walk away. And we gave people an opportunity to give us 10 minutes or 20 seconds or 20 minutes. They could engage in these activities. We had the sticky dot matrices that we used. People could prioritize populations, they could prioritize services, but we also had a participatory budgeting exercise where they could just give us 20 seconds. We had budget buckets with service areas outlined, and they would get 3 poker chips, and they could put their poker chips all in one bucket if they really wanted to, significantly fund a certain program, or they could spread them out. And it gave them an opportunity to see what the limitations are and the trade-offs that have to be made as you are prioritizing budgets and services. So that was another great thing. They could decide to give us 20 seconds, or they could decide to give us 20 minutes and really engage in all the matrices. And you see on the screen, these are all the other things we did in this 3-month crunch period of doing these pop-up workshops throughout our city. We did 31 stakeholder interviews. We had 13 focus groups with all the different population groups that I mentioned previously. And then we did have the traditional kind of wide-scale community meeting as well. One of the things, as a public participation professionals that you all are, is, you never want somebody to say, I didn't know that was happening, that I didn't know that there was an opportunity for me to provide feedback. And so our process really, in addition to the, thought that went into all the outreach activities, was also a lot of thought into the communication strategy. And we utilized the full range of city resources to help get the word out, and we really were committed to a kind of consistent, constant communication, that we were beating the drum on this for the 3 months that we were engaged in the process. So we created a social media presence. We did all the kind of standard things that you might expect, like flyers and posters and postcards. But we continued to do news releases throughout the process. So the survey was available, and we did a release. When that closed and more pop-up workshops were added, we did another release. We kept reaching out to all of our kind of existing groups, our own city commissions and advisory boards, our neighborhood watch groups, and then the social service agencies that currently serve us, because their clients and their agencies would certainly be among those most impacted. So we wanted to make sure people had all of the information about all the ways that they could participate. And then what we, our joke is that for 3 months we were just professional repeaters. But our focus was, making sure we knew what people were needing, what they felt like their friends or their neighbors were needing in terms of social services. And, in addition to getting the information that we needed and the data that we needed in terms of a needs assessment, what we also found was very inspiring, that our commitment to social services as a city is not just ours. It's absolutely a source of pride for our community members as well. It's important to them that we continue to provide these. They feel like it's part of the city's legacy, and that they have a sense of shared ownership in this. This is not just something we do, as a city government. This is something we do as a city, and including our residents and community members. So in terms of, the kind of other piece of the core values, in terms of making sure that people know that their input does affect decision making, but also communicating back to them just how it did that. And for the community study, the results were highly tangible. The residents saw their input used almost immediately, and it did directly impact and influence funding decisions for social services. And so what we saw was new providers, additional substance abuse and detox services, increased access to mental health, increased access to psychiatric services, increased funding for HIV and STD testing and treatment. And we saw a range of these new services all focused on, or all based on the feedback that we got from our community members in this process. But besides that, it also fostered a sense of camaraderie among our community members who saw each other. Maybe they saw a neighbor at one of the pop-ups and could catch up. It fostered relationships between city staff and our residents. And the kind of unintended consequence that was really wonderful was that it also gave information to people who might not have known about all the range of social services that were available to them. And at some of the pop-ups, we were actually able to connect people directly to service as a result of just being out in the public and meeting them where they were. So in terms of that continued engagement, some of the findings were just so great. We wanted to continue to find creative ways to communicate about them. And so we created a set of graphics that people could utilize via social media, and we've done that to use in city publications. People have used them as their email signatures. And we continue to do that, as well as a result of this process, we continue as a social service division to go out and do these pop-ups now as information opportunities. So connecting people where they are, when they may be interested in a service. And so we're continuing to do those, going to some of the same places we popped up previously, but just this time providing information, answering questions that people may have about various social services. But what we also found, which was very thrilling for us, is that 90% of our community members rated their quality of life as excellent or good. And so we wanted to, of course, spread that out and let people know. And then it also was points of connection that we found 55% of our residents attended a city event, and we could use these kind of graphics to bolster the different divisions. So this would be something that would be really great for our public information office to be able to use this information that 60% of our residents have visited the website in the last 12 months. And then we saw, we took some of the information that we knew people liked best, and so we could use these, and the different city divisions and departments could use these as well. The fact that people like that it's pedestrian-oriented impacts a lot of things, from planning to transportation and mobility. These are things that people would be looking for. It's safe and quiet, the public safety, something for them to be very proud of and know that our community members really value. That it's near amenities and centrally located, and that's certainly something for our economic development team to be paying attention to, that's something people value. And then it's clean and well kept. That's our public works department. That's our arts and cultural affairs programming that you see in that photo. So it crosses all city divisions and departments, the things that make people happy and enjoy about West Hollywood. And so it was important to not just have this information contained in the social services division, but to communicate it more broadly throughout the city and with our community members.
So Corey, actually, I'm just going to jump. Corey, I'm going to jump in just before you head there. So how did you provide all of this information internally? Did you give them a reporting out on what you heard, or did you involve them in the process as you went along?
We did involve them in the process, and then we did report back. So we reported back in a number of ways. We reported back, obviously, to our City Council and our Human Services Commission, but then more internally, we have kind of given these presentations on some of the demographic shifts that we saw, some of the social service needs that we saw, to our city directors, to our managers, and then we also did as we have an internal training program called WeHoU, and we did that a presentation there where staff could, on a voluntary basis, come and choose to learn more about what we found as part of the community study. So that kind of internal education continues as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, and just to wrap up quickly, our goal was really to look at, updating our demographics and look at those recommendations for social services funding. And in the process, in addition to the social service specific recommendations, you'll see here on the screen too that the other two key recommendations that came from the study were about community engagement and communications about existing services. And, what was clear is that we have to continue to be creative and develop these ways to engage our community members. But it was, really inspiring process and affirming of our core values as a city, that our community does care about what we're doing and they value it. And our core values and community priorities still line up, and that was obviously good news. But we, obviously have to continue to create these opportunities, and I hope that you'll go to the IAP2 site when they put the videos up. We had a video for the conference, and our mayor and the video will do a much better job of capturing the energy and the enthusiasm that are kind of the hallmarks of the city and that were captured as part of the study. So I will wrap up there. Just thank you for inviting us. We learned so much at the conference and look forward to continued opportunities to be involved.
Thanks so very much, Corey. And now I know that we have some poll questions, so we'll pop the poll questions out there. And again, a reminder to all of the participants, please send me your questions, both for Corey and Tracy, so that we can get you engaged. And also, please don't hesitate to put up your hand. It would be nice to hear a few other voices as well, and we can open up your mic and you can ask your question directly. So we'll go to the poll questions at the moment. They're up. Have you ever utilized these type of pop-up workshops to facilitate public participation? And we're going to close this in 5 seconds and see what the result is. So Corey, interesting result. It's a 50-50. So 50% have and 50% haven't. We're going to go, because it's a two-part question for Corey, so we'll go on to the second question. And then Corey, maybe you can think of why you would recommend this type of consultation activity as well. So the next question is, if you answered yes, so to the 50% that said yes, have you used them more than once in the process? So we'll give 5 seconds to respond to that. And 40% of that 50% have said yes, and 60% have said no. So Corey, there was probably a reason for asking that question. So again, your experiences and why you would recommend them.
You know, I think for us it really let us see the non-usual suspects. And that when we looked at timing of day, we know where we saw different people and different locations, it really was beneficial to us to really get kind of a better representation of the full diversity of our city, and because it was, we made it look fun, we made the experience something that I think people felt like it was just truly meaningful for them to have participated. That it was it was good for the engagement, it was good for the information we were able to solicit, and I think rather than just doing it as a one-off, it's been helpful to us, and like I said, we're going to continue to do it in an information giving way as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, we have some brave soul who's put up their hand, so I'm going to open Stephen's mic. And Stephen, you can go ahead now and ask your question.
Thank you. This is Steve Buckley. I'm thinking of having my own town council adopt the core as an official policy, and I was wondering to what extent West Hollywood, whether the core values were cited or adopted, or how official or unofficial they were cited, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. The city has its own core values that guide it in a number of areas, and the area that kind of impacts our area of work the most is respect and support for people. And I think under that umbrella, certainly the IAP2 values would come into play, but they didn't do any adopting of the IAP2 core values in the process, but guided by our own core values and this process, that's kind of where they're at with the City Council.
So thank you, Stephen. Stephen, I've also opened up Tracy's mic for the City of Calgary, because she may have something she'd like to add as far as IAP2 core values and how it led to their process, which is a slightly customized one. But Tracy, did you want to talk about how the core values supported your process?
Well, I think the biggest value was that often of course, there's an education component to our work, and we have to bring people up to speed about what P2 is and what it means. So one of the things that I frequently do, and I did with Route Ahead, is I actually just do a Word document. I create a table, and I showed the core principles of transforming government, and I compared those to the core values of IAP2, and what at that time were called the cornerstones of engagement for the City of Calgary's Engagement Resource Unit. And I also on that added the UN core principles of good governance, and I showed how all of them complemented each other and how they were very much aligned with one another. And I think that showed my clients and concerned people within the city that what we're doing here is not something that you don't already honor and know about. We just have a different name for it, and it's a different organization and process. So it gave them a sense of comfort, and also it was something to be celebrated as well, is that, hey, IAP2 is doing stuff that's aligned with what we're doing. That's got to be good news for the corporation and for the citizens of Calgary.
Stephen, did that help?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have any core principles or whatever, so I'm going to see how they'll take it cold.
Okay, thank you. And if there's anybody else out there that has had a city or municipality take on the IAP2 core values, I know we'd like to hear about it. Stephen, I know that there are examples across Canada, and I'm sure there are examples across the United States as well, where they've taken the IAP2 core values. Some of them have started with that, and then they've customized it to meet their city. But often it has been a launching pad for many different cities and organizations across North America. So so I'm looking for anyone that might have any examples of those. I have some more questions. So thank you, Stephen, for that. I have some more questions. And it became very obvious as we were looking at your PowerPoint presentations, both to Corey and to Tracy, that the use of vibrancy and activity and action were really important components of the work that you did, and also really simple language. And, you know, it hasn't traditionally been the case. Quite often, you know, we've wanted to have pages and pages and pages of awareness materials and things like that, but we're seeing a change with what you've produced or presented today. Can you tell me a little bit more about why and how that's being received? And Corey, do you want to go first in answering that question?
I'll just say quickly, you know, we have a very creative community. One of our tags is the creative city, so we had to be, you know, have something that was attractive, that, you know, was inviting, and it would look like something fun that you wanted to go to. You know, if we're standing outside a grocery store with a clipboard, people don't even want to look you in the eye. They want to get past you as quickly as they can. And we wanted to make it look like a place you know, as inviting and welcoming as we could. That it was something that was fun and happening, and you wanted to kind of check it out. We had some giveaways as well. We had some reusable bags we were giving away. Dog pickup bags, very popular here, so we had some of those kind of things that we could, you know, kind of lure people in a little bit. But it was designed to be very colorful and very inviting, obviously by design.
Thanks. Tracy?
And I would say Calgary is known as the heart of the New West, and we still have very much sort of a frontier mentality, which is not a bad thing. It means that we're willing to try new things and embrace new things. And so Calgarians have really high expectations, not only of each other, but of their local government. So we had to up the game, and we also had to keep in mind that a lot of Calgarians are very young in age, and we're also one of the most wired cities in North America. So we had to be responsive to people's reduced attention time and desire for something new and competing for their attention.
Thanks, Tracy. It's interesting that you would have said that, because I noticed in Corey's presentation she talked about we would like you to stay from anywhere from 20 seconds to 10 minutes, and that's really quite the that's quite the spread. And again, not always traditional for us as public participation. We often still ask people to join us for more deliberative conversations of 2 and 3 hours. So interesting that both of you have chosen to provide so many variety of opportunities for that engagement, and I'm presuming it's purposeful, but you've got quite a lot of participants online there. So again, your advice or recommendation for anyone that's online for the whole idea of 2 to 20 to 3 hours.
Absolutely, I do. You have to give them the option. Even online, it was they could read. They could literally go through the entire spreadsheet of comments from 5,000 Calgarians, or they could just look at some infographics that gave them the big picture story, or watch a 3-minute video. So even online, there had to be that diversity of experiences.
Thank you. Corey?
And we did offer that kind of more traditional community meeting, and we tried to keep it to about an hour and a half. We just have found, you know, with other city projects that were similar in type, you know, it's really hard to get people to come to a 2-hour meeting in the evening. They may, you know, just not want to give you that much time. People have, you know, child care issues, you know, work conflicts, any number of issues that would prevent them from participating that way. But, you know, we had that opportunity for people. We had the sit-down focus groups and stakeholder interviews where people could participate for a longer period of time. But we also wanted to get those people who maybe had something really valuable to share, or they're, you know, we wanted to solicit their input, and we were going to get them in passing at a grocery store to go ahead and put their 3 poker chips in the budget buckets, you know, in the service areas that they would prioritize. We wanted to have all of those options. We had, you know, the online options for the survey as well. So we had you know, people could do the survey at home and take their time. They could go online. They could do the paper version. But we just tried to give as many options as possible for people to give us what time they were willing to give us.
So throughout both of your processes, I'm presuming that you did different types of evaluation on how well the different techniques were being used, how well people felt that their voices were being heard, etc. Because every now and again people will push back and say, well, if you didn't give them this much time, how can you expect for a really good, genuine approach or really good, genuine feedback? So what did your evaluation say? Did people feel they were engaged? Did people feel that their voices were being heard? Corey?
We heard that repeatedly. You know, when you do something as a government agency, you know, the easy thing for people to say is, I didn't know they were doing that, or I didn't hear that I wasn't aware. We didn't hear that in this process because we kept putting information out. And we did, as the process went on, we thought, yeah, we need to look at a couple more stakeholder interviews, or we need to add a focus group for this. We did add a pop-up workshop. We added a few, but we added one in a location we hadn't planned to be at because we heard from community members, you're not going to get this population if you don't go here. And we had thought about that location, and our assessment as city staff was that's not going to be a lot of residents. It's going to be more people who are visiting West Hollywood and kind of a more touristy area. And then what we found is listening to people, if we went at this certain time, and we found a lot of community members there that we wouldn't have been able to access at any of the other opportunities. So we did kind of, you know, listen and adapt, and, you know, we had some room to be flexible as we went on and heard that kind of, you know, ongoing, you know, in the moment assessment and evaluation from our community members.
Thanks, Corey. Tracy, your thoughts about evaluation?
Yeah, we heard people are quite happy with the variety of evaluation, and one of the more time-intensive events that we had, which was the Customer-to-Customer World Cafe, is that was for the people who wanted to spend half a day talking about transit. And interestingly to me, a lot of the people who invested half the day also invested time online and visiting the engagement bus. So what we heard was that people really appreciated the diversity of opportunities and that they felt that we were being very responsive to their needs. So again, not unlike what Corey and her team did, whether people had 5 minutes or 50 minutes, it was something that would work for them.
Thank you. And one last question to both of you. I'm still looking for questions from the audience, so please don't hesitate to send me some. How did your decision makers, because both of these were quite different in their approaches from what you'd done traditionally before. How did your decision makers receive all of this information, and were they involved in the process? Maybe Tracy, we'll start with you and then go to Corey.
Well, I guess I have to say it depends who you say our decision makers, because our decision makers are really the public, so they were involved. And then in terms of internal decision makers, the project team, the director of transit, the manager of the project, they were all very involved in events, riding the bus, going out into the community, being at the customer-to-customer event. And even on the road and at the customer-to-customer event, we had various aldermen, we had the mayor, and we certainly had elected members of council take the bus through their communities. So they were there, they were present, they were involved, and they witnessed the input and they heard it firsthand. So it was really quite amazing rather than us just reporting to them after the fact.
Thanks, Tracy. Corey, your thoughts?
You know, I think we had two bodies that were really looking at this from kind of the city government structure, and that was our Human Services Commission as well as our City Council. And the Human Services Commission did have a subcommittee that worked in partnership with staff on this process and helped, you know, provide input as well. And our council, I think, was deeply gratified by the level of community engagement, by the feedback, and you saw, you know, as I mentioned, that that input really did impact the funding recommendations and what the Human Services Commission and what the City Council ultimately, you know, voted in support to move forward with these changes in our contracts with the social service agencies. They increased services in specific areas. So I think they were deeply, you know, gratified by the level of participation, but also appreciative to have that kind of feedback to make, you know, a pretty significant investment in community service, and to have that kind of input was really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to extend my sincere thank you to Corey and Tracy. Incredible work. Congratulations. Huge round of applause coming from all of the participants online. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to remind everyone that our next webinar is Tuesday, April the 8th. And please note the start time for the Tuesday, April the 8th one is at 3 p.m. Eastern. Which is different than our standard time. The next webinar is on Core Values Part 2. John Lewis of Intelligent Futures won the International Member-at-Large category for our WSCANA, and he's going to be presenting, along with Tyrone Reitman of the Health Democracy Oregon, which shared the IAP2 USA Project of the Year with Corey's group for the Oregon Citizens Initiative. So we learn a lot about our own core values based on these projects, what they've done, why they've done it, and why they've been successful at being a Core Value Awards winner. So Part 2 will give you that opportunity to see 2 more of the 2013 winners and why their projects are outstanding, because they wouldn't have been winners if they hadn't been outstanding. And again, to all of the participants online, stay tuned to the IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA website in April or early May so that you can apply to win your Core Value Awards as well, because part of the responsibility or part of the reason for IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA is to advance the practice of good public participation. And it's by learning from people like Corey and Tracy and the others, Tyrone and John next month, that we can all continue to better our practice and raise the bar of good P2 in North America and around the world. So that's my challenge to you. Start thinking about whether or not you want to apply. What are your projects doing that would make you an award winner for the core values? Thank you very much to everyone that's participated today. We should be getting the taped recording out to you within the next 48 hours. We will be putting the PowerPoint presentations up online, and we will also be putting the video that Corey talked about online as well. So thanks to everyone for participating. Have yourselves a great day, and we look forward to talking to you again on Tuesday, the April the 8th. And again, a reminder, it starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye now.